Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, the creator and host of the award-winning podcast that you're listening to right now. Thank you so much, called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. It is a daily podcast, 365 days a year, and each day we talk to an author about all of the things related to their career, their book, their life, and more in 30 minutes or less, because who has time? I am now an author myself, although I wasn't when I started this podcast, and you can get my new memoir, Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature, wherever books are sold starting July 1st, and my children's book, Princess Charming. You can learn more about me at zibbyowens.com, but really you're here to learn more about the authors, and that is what we're going to do. Also, be sure to check out all the other podcasts in the Zcast Podcast Network. You can learn more at zcastnetwork.com and definitely check out those shows as well. Kerry Docherty is the author of Somewhere Right Now. She is a founder and chief impact officer of Docherty brand, a lifestyle clothing brand centered on sustainability, craft, and community, which, by the way, is one of my all-time favorite brands. And in many pictures on Instagram, I am wearing Docherty brand clothing, including in my bio, the one with the check dress, and so many other pictures. I'm obsessed. It's so comfortable and fits really well. And anyway, just love Docherty. And they're popping up all over. Prior to starting Docherty, her background was in law, human rights, and mindfulness. She's passionate about using creativity and community as a tool to cultivate joy. She lives in Brooklyn with her 2 kids, husband, and an orange tree. This is her first book. Welcome, Kerry. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books.
So happy to be here.
Oh, this is so fun for me. And we did the launch event for Princess Charming together, along with some other fabulous women children's book authors, which of course is only one little aspect of all of us and particularly all of you. But I was able to talk to you about your book then, and now I'm excited to dive in even more to the book and your life and everything exciting.
All the things.
And of course, the best part, well, maybe not the best part, but a great part is that we have the same publisher, Flamingo Books, and the same editor, Margaret Anastas. So I feel like we are book siblings in a way, which means we're family. So there you go.
Mutual friends from the Sanders.
Yes, of course. That too, which is also, I could have led with that, I guess. But anyway. Okay, so let's talk about your book to start. Tell listeners about your book, how it became a book, what the main messages are, which kids should definitely read this book, blah, blah, blah.
Well, as my 4-year-old says, Riggs, he says, this book is about feelings, which pretty much sums it up. But I wrote the book during COVID when, we were stuck inside and dealing with a lot of stresses. And during the day, each of us was having difficult feelings. And so the book is really about a family, a son, a daughter, and parents who throughout the day either are frustrated, angry, sad, or exhausted. And the family members acknowledge that in each other and then also remind each other that somewhere right now, something beautiful is still happening. That's the title of my book, Somewhere Right Now.
I think I have had all 4 of those emotions even this morning before 9 o'clock,
And, for me, it was really important to have a kid's book where the parents had feelings. So the dad is sad, the mom's exhausted, because I think it's important for our children to know that, their parents are also human and also go through everything. And this idea of normalizing how we feel. And I even have noticed it with my kids. I have a 6-year-old and 4-year-old, a lot of temper tantrums, going through all the things that when I'm like, you know what? I too get frustrated at that. I see something shift in them. Like, oh, wow, these feelings don't just belong to me. This is a part of being human. And so that's really something that I wanted to convey. My background had been in mindfulness. And so I read a lot of kids' books, about mindfulness. And this was just kind of my lens and my offering in the world of, I guess, parenting and visualizations and acknowledgement of feelings and all the things.
Well, thank you for helping out the rest of us with this, giving something for a tool to put in our toolbox when our resources emotionally are completely diminished. I feel like this book really, really comes in handy and is so helpful for everyone. Wait, go back to your career in mindfulness, because that's so cool to even have as a career. And to go back to growing up, like give us your backstory, where you grew up and what you wanted to be when you grew up and how you ended up in this field.
I grew up in Buffalo, New York. My mom was a yoga teacher. I feel like really before yoga was so mainstream. And so she would always make us listen to chanting on our way to school and always had a gratitude journal, like all of the things. And I think at a young age, then I was embedded in some of these resources that I didn't know were mindfulness at the time, but they were. And then went to college, played a sport. It felt like, very competitive all the time. That like type A part of me was always on high alert.
Wait, what sport?
Went to law school.
Wait, slow down.
I played
Lacrosse. Okay.
I did lacrosse. Then I went to law school. And I think it was in law school when I realized, wow, I stressed a lot. And so I went to Pepperdine Law School, but UCLA has an institute on mindfulness called the Mindful Awareness Research Center. And so I started training there just on my own accord. And I had been working with human rights and social justice. And so having that mindfulness tool just for myself felt really grounding. And then after law school, I was clerking for a judge. And my judge said to me one day, would you ever do mindfulness with some of these defendants? We have a bunch of young defendants who are charged with, drug crimes, and it might be helpful for them. And so I started doing mindfulness with some of the defendants. And then my judge said, my daughter actually has performance anxiety and she's studying for the SATs. Would you do mindfulness with her? And I said, sure. And then there was an opportunity to teach mindfulness for continuing legal educations for lawyers. So by the time I ended my clerkship, I had this full-fledged mindfulness business, which I called the Mindful Mentors. And this was, I guess, in 2010. And I did that for 2 years and really thought that would be my trajectory. And then, as you know, my husband and brother-in-law, their dream was to start a clothing company, Docherty brand. And so the month they started, they just looked at me and they said, we need help. And that really shifted my career in mindfulness to retail. And so now we have a clothing company.
It's not just a clothing company. It is like one of my most favorite brands ever. She just slid that in really casually. Fahertybrand.com. FAHERTYBRAND.com. Go check it out. And Faherty Brand is
our number one ambassador.
I probably am. I'm probably I'm probably keeping your business afloat during the toughest times of but it's so great. I love the clothes. They're so comfortable. I just finished packing for the weekend and I was like, oh, I love this shirt and I love these pants.
Yes. It's like high quality, it's comfort. And I think we're at a place, and I know you feel like this too, with your business and all your different passions. It's like we're no longer compartmentalized, in turn, like how we show up is how we show up. Mm-hmm. And whether it's in our writing or whether it's in the businesses we're running or whether it's like with our team, like all of us are, I don't know, especially after the pandemic, like we're all just in it at all times. And so for me, it's like, how am I showing up as a leader? How are we incorporating mindfulness into retail and clothing and making smart decisions? And whether I'm writing a book or sitting in a Zoom meeting about marketing, I think it's bringing our full selves to all of these decisions.
100%. So important. I feel like it really comes through no matter what the product is, right? You can tell.
Intention. Yeah, for sure. I love to hear that. That's because it is. We are obsessed kind of about the details and what we put out into the world.
But you are Chief Sustainability Officer? No, I did it wrong. Chief
Impact. So
Chief
sustainability.
Impact. Okay. Chief Impact Officer. So talk about that.
So we do, making sure our sustainability efforts are where we want them to be, which a lot comes down to supply chain, packaging, kind of all that non-sexy stuff, but that's super important. And then around our culture. So what's it like to come to work at Faherty every day? Our community events. So we have an event series called Sun Sessions, which is around like good people spreading good vibes. So we do a lot of stuff with musicians, workshops. We've had retreats in the past, and do have my background in law. So still do that a little bit, although I'm like really ready to retire from the law. But yeah, so those are all the things I have my hands in.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's our name on the brand. So I think it's so important for us that I never legally changed my name, but it's So important for us. It's like a direct reflection of who we are, the things that we put out into the world.
That's so funny. There's so many people who didn't legally change their name, but go by their husband's name. Have you found that? I feel like more and more people are just like, oh yeah, I didn't change my name.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't make it very easy. I did change my name both times, but probably because I really couldn't wait to like get rid of my original last name. I was like, I keep trading up here in my last names, but they definitely don't make it easy. But yes, I don't know. Maybe this is a new long-term trend that
totally.
I don't know. And I relate to having your name on the brand as I'm trying to start this publishing company, Zibby Books. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like if people don't like the book, are they not going to like me?
I know.
I'm so worried. Anyway, maybe I should have named it something else. But too late, I guess. Is it too late? Maybe I could still change it.
Still change it. But I think it's great. I think it helps people trust brands and trust companies when someone is the face of it. And it's also more pressure, but I do think that human element is so important. Yeah. And so many people adore and love you already, and trust your voice and trust the people you're interviewing in the podcast and the work that you're putting out. And so I think it only adds value.
I hope so. I mean, I love our books. Just everything has to be so perfect. It's just there's so many elements. This is a lot more challenging than I thought.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, okay. So go back to then you were going through this experience, but why write a book? Why did you had you always wanted to write a children's book? Have you written other stuff? Have you written curriculums for mindfulness? I
wrote curriculums for mindfulness. I've always been an avid writer, like a journaler. I think I wrote my own obituary when I was like 8 years old. I'm a Gemini, so there's a part of me that's like optimistic and compassionate and mindful, and then like deep down I'm like a sick fuck and like writing about like horror stories and ghost stories and all that kind of stuff. But I had met our mutual publisher and editor, Margaret, when I had a mindfulness blog. And she said, I think you have a kid's book in you. And I said, I think I do too. But that was 2011. And so 10 years had passed. And then during COVID, I wrote a Instagram post on Fairdy brand, and it was a picture of a whale swimming with her calf through the sea. And I said, I know things are hard right now, but somewhere right now this is happening. And Margaret called me and said, that's the name of the book. I know the illustrator, and you have 6 weeks to write it. I was like, okay. And then I wrote a draft, and she was like, this is not what I want. Start over. You have 5 weeks to write it. And so it felt like this book was both, 12 years in the making, and also fell into my lap at the same time. So
Margaret is like the fairy godmother, sprinkling children's book dust around the world.
She really is.
Everybody gets a book. You write a book. You write a book. It's amazing.
Yeah. But I am, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, but I'm a part of Brooklyn Writers Collective, which is an amazing writing group based in Brooklyn, although it's now via Zoom for anyone who wants to join. But I do feel like I have another adult book in me, and I don't know if that's a collection of essays or if it's poetry or if it's a memoir. I don't even know if it's ever going to be something I put into the world, but it is something on the side that I find joy in writing. But that's, who knows, it could be 2 years from now or 15.
That's really exciting though.
And I feel like without a deadline, it's just like, you can just keep writing away.
Would you like me to give you a deadline?
You're like 4 months. Let's go.
I'm like, how does January 1st end?
I know. I guess I just don't know what it is yet. I mean, when you were writing bookends, I know you've written a couple different iterations, but how do you know what you're writing? Or it became clear it was a memoir?
A good question. No, I mean, I wrote bookends came out of this memoir I wrote called 40 Love, about falling in love again at 40, but that was only part of it. And then it also came out of a memoir I wrote called Off Balance, which was about a different part of my life from when we had talked about Stacey earlier, like when she had passed away on 9/11 and all of that. And I had and then of course there was my whole life in between, and I was trying to make sense of it. So I had 2 discarded memoirs, and then I was like, there has to be a better framework. So I tried to sell it on proposal, and then that didn't work a couple times. Because you're right, I didn't know how exactly to do it. I knew the story, but the story felt so big at times until I figured out this way of introducing books. And for whatever reason, that made it all click for me of how I would do it as a theme. But I don't know. I mean, the first drafts, everything I did, I had to write 4 times. right? The first time is just like, I think I want to do this. Well, okay. Well, now that I did that, I can see that really the book should look like this. So I'm going to try that, and then do it again. And then you're like, oh, well, now that I did that one, it would actually be really great if it was like this, or maybe now it should be a novel or whatever. So yeah, I think the first draft you just have to get out. But what do I know?
How'd you structure it? Like, is it chronological or is it thematic or is it?
Bookends is chronological, and it's structured around the books I read at the time. So each chapter has different books that I read while I was doing it. And there's a book list at the end.
Oh, I love that.
And I did it in sections, and I actually, just by years, like 1976 to 1982 or something like that. And then I realized at the end, there were the exact number of sections as there were letters in bookends. So each section starts with one of those letters.
I love that. Oh, I love that.
And then each chapter title is the title of a book that I was reading in the chapter.
So smart. So smart.
Anyway, but who knows? I mean, the first thing is just getting the story out. Like, what is it that's so compelling and why? Like, why? Like, I don't know. For me, I'm like, I have to tell this story. It was so crazy to me what happened with Stacy and everything. Like, I have to let other people know, and I want her memory to live on. And, there are all these reasons why you feel like the stories you want have to get out. So I feel like start with those. Like, what do you have to get out? What do you feel like if this were cut out of the book, it's like not even worth doing the book? Like, then just start with that section.
Yeah. And then it's like telling the truth the entire time. I think for me, as I'm writing, sometimes telling the truth affects other people in our families, in our lives. And I think for me, that's what I'm balancing is the best parts of stories are those when we're like in our rawest, truthful form. But also we are a character in our own book. And like, are we a trusted narrative? Like, can we, we're sharing what happened, but other people might think differently about what we're sharing. And it's like all the things I think about when I'm writing. But for now, I'm just like, be honest and write.
Yes. I put in the beginning of bookends, I was like, if you were involved in any of these scenes and you remember it totally differently, you're probably right. I'm like, this is just how I remember it. This is my best guess at it. But sorry, I'm sure you're right. But yes, you can always take stuff out. You can go in and do like a surgical extraction of any character you want.
Yeah.
But not until you write them. So,
Right.
I don't know. Well, that's so fun you're doing that. That's great. Amazing. What else do you have on your slate aside from, basically running a business and writing a memoir and managing 2 kids?
Oh, man. Well, we're about to move. We're leaving Brooklyn. So I've been in Brooklyn for 15 years, moving out of Brooklyn to the Jersey Shore, July 1st. So I'm gearing up for that big move.
Wait, you're going to live permanently on the Jersey Shore?
Yes. We're moving in with my mother-in-law at our family house that we go to every weekend. So it's the town where my husband grew up, Spring Lake. So it feels big. It really feels like I'm closing a chapter of my New York City life. But I think just during the pandemic, it was like our kids, we just need them to run.
Mm-hmm.
We need a backyard.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of pressure, I feel like, to raise a kid in the city.
True.
Because I get home from 6:30 and I'm exhausted. And like, can we go to the park? I'm like, I can't take you to the park right now. But if I had a backyard, I can open up and you could run out. So yeah.
So basically it'll
be a big shift, but I think we're ready for it.
What we will do to not have to go to the park at 6:30 at night.
Oh my gosh. If I have to go to this park again, yeah. And I think one of the things I'm also writing a lot about is just parenting and, mothering for me. I am obsessed with my children, but mothering for me is really hard. Like I find it so boring. Just so boring. And I don't love things that have needs. And, my kids always have needs. They're like, Mom, we're hungry. I'm like, I fed you 4 hours ago. They're like, I know, but kids eat 3 meals a day. I'm like, you know what? Good point. Okay, here we go. So I think being in a smaller town where there's just more kids around and they have more like autonomy to be out and about will be better for everyone.
I love that. That's really funny. Well, I have high hopes for the memoir if you continue to write like that, talking about like parenting is boring. That could just be the whole chapter. So
I kind of want to write a book called The Lazy Wife. and like talk about being both a lazy wife and a lazy mom and explore all of those things about what it mean. But we'll see. Maybe I'll start with an article first.
You might need, don't do lazy, because there is a woman, Kendra Adachi, and she is the lazy genius. And now she has the Lazy Genius Kitchen, and she's like a best-selling author. So I would pick a different word.
Noted. Okay,
Yeah.
good. No,
Yeah, she's claimed lazy, I think, even though of course she's super productive. But yes,
love it. I have to read that.
Yeah, it's good. She has a podcast too on the same network as mine on Acast. So
awesome.
You're welcome, Kendra, for the shout out. You can listen to me on her podcast. You can listen to her on my podcast. Blah blah blah. Well, do you have any advice for aspiring children's book authors?
Oh man, I think there's the act of writing because it brings you joy and you have a story to tell. And I think that's the most important part. And it's sharing with the people you love. And yes, maybe you get published, maybe you don't. But I think so many people, when it comes to writing, is about like getting the book out in the world. And there's also just ways to get the book out in the world without having like a formal editor or a formal illustrator. One of my kids' favorite book is Laura Sanders' husband did a children's book and published it on Amazon. And I just think writing is such a beautiful gift and storytelling is such a beautiful gift that we don't have to pen the success of what we're writing on just getting it published. Because I think a lot of people have kids' books in them and it's also really hard to get published.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you're published, then you have to sell the book. People are always like, are you writing another kid's book? I'm like, well, I guess it depends how many books I sell, And so I think, write because you love to write, share it with friends, go to FedEx and print it and put a cover on it and spread the gift that way. And if you do get lucky to have an agent or a publisher, like that's amazing too, but it doesn't necessarily mean the story you're telling isn't worthwhile if that doesn't happen.
Great advice. Very good. Kerry, thank you. Thanks for coming on Moms No Time to Read Books. Thank you for...
I love that our Princess Charming and Somewhere right now are like living in the world together.
I know. It's so cute. I love it. Amazing. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Good luck with your move. Soon. Okay. Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.